welcome to Watts Weekly. And the thing I'm going to talk about this week, or the thing that I've been asked, is what are your influences outside of art? So the things that I use to influence my artwork most outside of other artists and other artwork, and sometimes even more so than those things, are movies. So I'm a big film fan, and I often look more at motion picture directors than I do other artists when designing compositions and coming up with ideas. So I let many of my favorite films or directors sort of roll through my mind. In fact, often when I'm creating an image, I try to see a little short film in my head, and I pick the best shot within that film to create a composition. So as I'm going through my thumbnails, that's basically how I approach it many times. Rockwell would say that when he was starting a composition and he was stuck, he would just always start with a little sketch of a man leaning against a light pole. And then he would ask himself, well, what's this guy doing? Oh, he's waiting for the bus. Here comes the bus. And he would basically just go through a day in this guy's life. And when he hit what he thought was a compelling moment, that would be what he would illustrate. For me, it's a little bit different. When I get a brief from a client or a manuscript or something of that sort, what I do is I basically just start directing the movie in my head. And as I'm going through the movie, when I find a compelling image, I doodle it out as a thumbnail. I keep going through the movie, and once I get, 10, 15 of those, then I narrow it down to 3 to 5, and that's what I send off to my art directors. So essentially I approach it very much like storyboarding out a film. That's basically what my thumbnails are. And so in that vein, what I tend to do is I almost always have movies playing. I have movies playing in the background while I draw and paint. I'll watch movies of a similar genre during my downtime so that my brain's still cranking over and thinking of images and thinking of approaches outside of the more conventional illustration approaches to things. For instance, cinematic lighting, using a standard 3 lighting setup, using more unconventional camera angles, things like that, trying to imply motion a little bit more, and using cinematic storytelling techniques to get across the visual that I'm trying to get across, rather than necessarily looking at just other artists, which is a great place to go, but I don't want to limit myself to that. And I want to bring something a little different to the table. And again, for me, that's movies. So that being said, I tend to keep things around me that are what I enjoy. So you see a lot of classic horror imagery all around my studio. And those are the types of things that I use to kind of inspire me while I'm working. I might even grab one of the maquettes off the shelf for little bits of anatomy or texture, just a quick throw under a lighting when I'm turning a piece of reference into a zombie or a monster. It's good to have these things around me just, for quick little snippets. I'll grab an eye from here and an ear from there and some texture from over here, and they all come together to kind of help fill in the gaps of what my imagination can't picture very well. So the other things I do is now it's not as important because we have all these streaming features that we can deal with, like Amazon Prime and Netflix and things like that. But before that, back in the old days, I just have a large DVD collection. So I could just pop one of these movies in, and it's still actually really convenient to be able to just grab one of these movies and stick it in on my computer and have that playing in the background while I draw or paint and help influence me. The other things that I actually study the technical side of filmmaking as well. And these are just a few sampling books. I have many, many, many books on storyboarding, on filmmaking, on behind the scenes stuff, notes from directors, their approaches and their thoughts on filmmaking. Five C's of Cinematography, I think, is a great book. I use that one a lot. I've put together several lectures for my illustration classes and at conventions based off of the information in that book. Hitchcock at Work, talking about his general working process. Cinematic motion, just more cinematic styles of staging and framing things. I often have to convert that to a vertical format for covers, but it's really not that difficult to do. And then I have many books on actual films as well, which are also great. So those are some of the many things that I study when I'm going through and trying to come up with ideas, and not just basically cribbing off of other illustrators. Instead, I rip off film directors. So as I'm going through, I'll be watching a film, and I'll see the way that they do some lighting and I'll make a note to myself. I'll see the way that they frame an image and I'll make a note to myself. And sometimes I'll do little sketches based off of the movie that I'm watching. And those things help me out a lot trying to come up with different ideas for my illustrations rather than necessarily just, again, coming up with ideas cold or looking at other illustrators. So if there's anything that you find that's unique about my approach to illustrations or the way that I put images together, whether it be the lighting or the framing or the camera angles, most of that comes from film. I'm not saying that now you need to run out and become a film buff, but what you want to do is bring in other influences. Don't become too encapsulated in the art world. Go and bring in other influences. Like I said, go and travel around, see other parts of the world, go and read books, go whatever it might be. Bring in those other influences. Go and paint from nature. Go and do a lot of plein air painting and outdoor sketching, and bring that natural feel into your work. But all these influences, those are the things that are actually going to set you apart from other illustrators, because for the most part, artists and illustrators study a lot of the same stuff, a lot of the same books, a lot of the same material, and it's because those are good books and good material. But what's going to set you apart and what's going to make your work a little bit more unique is A, you, but also B, the things that you study and the things that you allow to influence and bleed into your artwork from outside of the immediate area of your genre or your medium or your peer group. So I hope this helps out a little bit, gives you a little bit of an insight into my thought process and the way that I go about things. And I'll see you next time on What's Weekly.